Hey, shalom, shalom. All praises on and glory belong to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the elders and to the apostles of Great and Stone. And salutations to you, brothers, all dear, pushing this word out in truth and in sincerity. This is Brother Akal, once again, coming at you with another lesson through the Spirit and power, Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai. All right, and this is what's in the news right now, what's popping in the news right now. All right. And this is definitely some beautiful news, you know, because this is just confirming, the words of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. All right. Yahushai say in Matthew chapter 24, all right, and verse 3 on down to about 7, it says one of the precepts is that you shall hear about wars and rumors of wars. When asked about the signs of his coming, and definitely around the globe, the tensions are rising as um, uh, President Trump, which we believe through the spirit to be the reincarnation of Emperor Nero, you know. And yeah, man, when he was in office back in 2016, was it 2016? Yeah, in 2016, hey, we really believed that this man was he that was gonna really and truly fulfill, or usher in that chip, and then, um, ultimately World War III. All right, but it seems as though him returning to office now is definitely, how it's looking, right? Is going to be, you know, the one that the Most High is going to use, So on screen, I have, a video loaded of Al Jazeera, basically, going into Trump launching that carrying out a large scale strike on Venezuela. And they uploaded this an hour ago. I did see a couple of articles posted probably like 6 hours ago and stuff. So, it seems as though that this whole thing, went down probably around midnight, our time, local time here in Guyana, and Guyana being very close to Venezuela, they're literally neighboring countries. Hey, you would expect, our local news media to be making somewhat of a more alarmed posts and articles about it. But I did see a couple of things, but nothing that says, hey, this thing could spill over, But hey, at the end of the day, it's all about the will of the Most High, right? So I can play some of this because this is just Yapa News, right?
Let's go to Shihab Ratansi. Shihab, what are we hearing now from the US president?
Explosive Truth Social post from Donald J. Trump. I shall read it out. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement.
You see, so, hey, this man strike Caracas, capture, President Maduro along with his wife. All right. I'm not sure how many were killed in the strike or if any. All right, but hopefully they have that news. All right, but again, this is all about the tensions rising, because Venezuela have key we say deals, all right, with Russia and China, and if they're gonna come around these, because China and Russia are also superpowers too. Obviously, America being America, But the scripture do talk about Russia being, that guard on these other nations. Ezekiel chapter 30, 37 and 38. So Russia is definitely not a nation to turn an eye on. It's definitely a nation to pay attention to, because the tension between the two, America and Russia, will continue to rise. All right. And there's actually some other news I was reading earlier about uh, President Trump basically sending a warning out to Iran, that look, they could invade or come to the rescue of protesters there. So again, which Iran is also a strategic partner of Russia and China. They have that ties too. So again, this is how these wars really get started. It started between two nations, and then escalate because of ties and allies into a world war. So pay attention to what's going on. And obviously this is not going to fully pop off without that chip becoming mandatory. All right, but as the tension rise, in certain distractions and things, they're going to push this chip, under your noses, and then before you know it, they're going to say, hey, the central bank would have gone down, or something, something, something. Therefore, we need to make this thing mandatory. You see? So again, just pay attention to what's going on, because hey, this thing could happen at any minute now. This thing could truly happen at any minute now.
Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Sammy?
Shihab, that is quite a statement. I want to make sure we heard it and understood correctly. This is the US president saying that US forces have captured the president of Venezuela and his wife and taken them physically out the country. Is that right?
That's exactly what he has just said. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. That is the Truth Social post posted just a minute ago.
I imagine, Shihab, I know the answer to the question of, I guess they're not saying where he's been flown to and what is to happen to him.
It's interesting, though, that he talks about it having been done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. So they're still sticking, I would think, then, to this narrative of the cartel of the Suns, this rather bogus.
So hey, this thing. It's when you look at how America would have done this thing, and I think there's a couple of articles which go into the ways in which they executed this. They have the ships, all right. The what do you call it? Aircraft carrier, all right, the submarines and everything docked in the Caribbean Sea. So they're able to, launch that strike, from a close proximity, and be able to, hit with a certain level of accuracy. So again, this is basically war. This is basically war. All right. But we're gonna keep a close eye on it though.
construction, which actually, in fact, was a CIA operation years ago with the Venezuelan government before Hugo Chavez. But if he's putting it in the context of law enforcement, clearly this is being put into that narrative of Nicolas Maduro being the drug dealer par excellence of Venezuela. I think Maduro gave an interview just a few days ago, maybe a week or two ago, where he said, look, I have the biggest proven reserves of oil, I have gold, why would I be a drug dealer? But clearly the U.S. administration is still running with this narrative, even though their own drug enforcement administration says that simply isn't true.
Yeah, man, and look, this whole thing was all a ploy, man. It is not, what they're saying, all right, about drugs and all these things. It's about a shift in power, all right, and oil, which they call it black gold right now, is going to be one of the most, or probably the most important commodity in a time of war, because they need to fuel their ships, they need to fuel their heavy machineries, they fight the jets, all right? They need to create the explosives and all these things, So a lot of nations are going to try to position themselves, as the owners of great oil or great reserves of oil, if you want to put it like that, So when you see a lot of these things popping off, hey, they understand the dynamics of controlling the important resources, People talking about going green and the solar energy and stuff. Hey, nobody give 2 cents about solar. They're still pushing oil. They're still pushing fossil fuel. All right.
At this point, does that indicate, again, don't want to ask you questions that I think I know the answer to, but is that the end of it? Any signal that this is the end of the U.S. military operation then?
Well, what's replacing Maduro is the question. Do they have then? I mean, this is what they hoped.
I was afraid to ask you that question as well. I was going to save it for Lucia Newman, but go ahead, Shihab.
Yeah, I mean, clearly what they'd hoped, and actually Maria Corina Machado had, and the reports came out actually at the beginning of the year, had said, look, we have a plan. We can replace them immediately. Just put the stranglehold on, and we'll get everyone to defect, and everything will be fine. Perhaps they believe this. We simply don't know. But if this is a decapitation strategy of removing Maduro, then one would think that they have a plan to follow up, or there is someone to replace him. But you're right. Maybe you should go to Lucia.
Yeah, and that's what America's been about, installing leaders around the world. All right, ones that are going to comply with the U.S. All right, and actually, back in the time of World War I or World War II, I can't remember exactly. Iran was the same thing. Where they decapitated one of the supreme leader at the time, all right, and installed their puppet of a supreme leader, which basically allied with Russia so that with America and Britain, all right, so that they could put a hold on Iraq, Slovakia. They executed this operation in Iran, removed their supreme leader at the time, and installed their own supreme leader, which was basically a retaliation tactic to say, hey, we have foot on the ground in the Middle East so that they could keep, Iraq and Afghanistan and other places in the Middle East at bay. And I'll probably revisit that little history and do a lesson on it. So they know what the next move is. They know who they're about to install in Venezuela. When you listen to the way that Trump would have posted on his social concerning Venezuela's oil and other resources. He basically claimed ownership or possession of it. So obviously, if he possessed it or he own it, he gonna install who the hell he want to install in Venezuela in the coming, days, weeks, or I don't foresee it to be months. All right, because again, this thing is about control and power.
Yeah.
Let me ask the question from this angle, which I think it makes sense to talk to you there in the US about. Have we had any indications, or are there any indications that the US is mobilizing some kind of effort to, shall we say, install someone or to facilitate the way for Machado or for an alternative to Maduro? Have you seen anything from your end?
Just what we've all seen, the Nobel Prize going to Machado. There's been this coordinated effort to present her as some viable alternative, again, despite a lot of the evidence that we see on the ground. There must be a great deal of confidence that they have a plan, one would think then, if they have removed Maduro. But all the intelligence that we've had and all the people you've been speaking to over the last few hours have found it very difficult to find any evidence of any coordinated, credible alternative to Maduro. Even elements of the opposition have been against any kind of U.S. regime change operation because, frankly, it immediately almost disqualifies any new government from appearing to represent the Venezuelan people and not a very resource-hungry neighbor to the north.
So look, I was reading this earlier, but this is basically the same thing.
When it comes to the art of diplomacy, there's a number of ways.
Yeah, which he's going to break down. Trump, Venezuela, and the new Cold War with China. Take in a little later. U.S. launches large-scale strike on Venezuela, captures President Maduro, Trump says. What do we know? Donald Trump says U.S. launched a large-scale strike on Venezuela. He added Venezuela's President Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of the country. The U.S. Army's Delta Force carried out the operation to capture Maduro. Officials tells the BBC U.S. partners CBS News. Venezuela has announced state of national emergency and said it rejects and denounces military aggression. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio anticipates no further action against Venezuela, says Republican Senator Mike Lee. This is the biggest military buildup in the Americas since the Cold War and follows weeks of heightened tensions, writes our correspondent Will Grant. All right, so they don't anticipate any further actions, but at the end of the day, it's all about what the Most High wanted. What the scriptures say in Joel, that the Most High is who must win the battle, so they won't anticipate any further action, but at the end of the day, the Most High is going to rise up that spirit on the Venezuelans or whatever, things are going to happen. All right. So, hey, Lord's willing, this quick one was edifying, giving our praises on and glory to Yahweh, Bashmi Al Shai, Bashim Kakodash, Shalom.